And so it was like that story of going from the highest high to the lowest low. And then I still had a long way to ski out of there to get out. And luckily I didn't really actually fall. I just kind of rolled over. It was just an awkward, I was screaming at the top. It was one of the more painful things because I didn't fully tear the ACL. I'd like 80% tore it or something. So then the nerves are still there, and it was not nice. And that was the end of my trip and the end of my season. But yeah, that line, I look back and I'm like, I wonder if I would do that again.
Hi, friends. Happy start to the winter. I hope it's snowing where you are because it is full-on winter where I am here in Jackson. And I just got back from Alta, from a ski jumps retreat where we are getting more people of color into the outdoors. Super psyched on that. But that was Hoji, Eric Hjorleifson, who this week is dropping his new film with Matchstick Productions. I caught up with Hoji at the Adventure Lodge outside Boulder, Colorado, to talk everything from this new film to how he got his start. We'll talk about his progression through the ski industry and all the adventure that's come along with it. I'm big mountain skier and adventurer Lynsey Dyer, and this is the Showing Up podcast. I started these conversations in person with real humans making a life in the outdoors to inspire the unicorn in you to embrace your weird, do the thing even if you suck at it, and fully show up for this one wild and precious life. I always thought Hoji was quiet. Turns out he has a lot to say. Enjoy. Hoji. We're outside Boulder, Colorado at the Adventure Lodge. Hoji's on this world tour promoting his new boot, and he's been all quiet about it, but the new Hoji movie?
Yeah, that's a project that's kind of come to life here in the last few months. I mean, it's been talked about for a while. Just kind of working with the Matchstick guys, and the idea has been thrown around, and then finally we're able to get the ball rolling and get some sponsors on board, and just seemed like a good time to do it. It's been 14 years of working with those guys, and a lot of new stuff happening with the ski boot and the revised Renegade, and just it's good opportunity to go and watch all that old footage again and put the best of the best together and kind of build up a story around my journey here. Very fortunate journey in the ski industry.
Yeah, it has been. You're so inspiring. So take us back to where it all began. Where were you born? How did it all start? Where did you get this style?
That's style, huh? No, I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. I was born in Banff, Alberta, Canada, and grew up just outside the next town over, Canmore, and had some wonderful parents, a great childhood. And really, it's my parents that provided me the opportunity to go skiing, took me, myself and my brother, skiing when we were just barely walking, or two. I think even before I was 2 years old, they were pushing me around on the bottom of Mount Norquay out of Banff there. And
are you the oldest or youngest?
Yeah, I'm the older brother. So a younger brother, Steven, and we had a lot of fun. But
and what did they do, your parents?
My parents, I think they really inspired kind of this drive and kind of making your own way and creating opportunities and taking advantage of following passion and motivation in your life. So they moved it to Canmore in the late 70s, and it was a kind of failed mining town in a mini depression. Meanwhile, Banff was this international, already at that time, a very popular international destination, and they were just kind of got in at the right time. My father bought a half-finished house that was needed to be sold, and he basically trained himself to become a carpenter and did a few courses and finished the house, and the town of Canmore throughout my childhood, like it just was entering into this boom where everything changed. It went from a mining industry town to a very kind of refurbished resort style town. A lot of people coming in from Calgary and being, it has the international airport, and then Banff really got shut down, restricted. No one could really invest in Banff, so Canmore became the hot ticket in the fast growing town. And so they basically throughout that 30-year period would buy a lot in the new developments, build a house, and we would live in it for a few years, and then they would sell it and make some money, and they just kept doing that. So they're really, I think that kind of set the tone of my life. Just kind of find a way to do what you can do, and they had some real jobs now and then, but really most of the time they were working for themselves, kind of making their own living.
Was your mom working on the house also?
Yeah, she did a lot of the work, and she was before they got into building houses. She was a surveyor, and my father was also he was working on paving crews in northern Alberta, and that's actually how they met. But back then, it was good pay, and he would work all summer, 18-hour days, and then come back and finish a house or whatever it was. And yeah, he took the winters off a lot of the time, and just because he wanted to go skiing.
That's awesome. But you never were trained formally, right? Like you didn't ski on a
Well, no,
Alpine?
I did. He was really, he saw that my brother and I were enjoying skiing, and he really, he taught us. He used to be a ski instructor as well. He was kind of a ski bum for a while, and I think I was about 10 years old, and I think he felt that he had kind of taught us as much as he could, and he put us in the Nancy Green ski race program, and then into Banff Alpine Racers. And yeah, my parents were super supportive. Like racing is, even back then, was not, I mean, when you're young, it's not terribly expensive, but I took it until age 16.
Okay.
But yeah, so I had some really good, fantastic ski coaches, mentors that are still good friends in my life today, and they were great race coaches, but they also were amazing. Like they just loved skiing and free riding. I guess before it was free riding, we would just, as soon as we were done training, we'd just go and ski all over the mountain, and they would, they wanted us to become skiers. And even on, like, if growing up in the Rockies, there's not a ton of snow all the time, but when we were at the resort and it was a powder day, they would just leave the gates in the van, and we'd go skiing.
Yeah, same. Those were the best days ever.
Yeah.
So, how was school for you?
School was all right. Like growing up in Canmore was really nice. Like probably 90% of the people I went to like preschool with, I graduated with, and we had a small couple hundred kids graduated in my high school year there, with 2001, and so I have a lot of friends still to this day. We're not as close. I don't live there anymore, but we definitely had a good circle of friends that had grown up together since the beginning. And Canmore is really nice because it was all just kind of wilderness before it got really overdeveloped. And yeah, we just had free reign. We were just in the forest constantly all summer long, playing guns, building forts, and running around, and just no supervision. But yeah, school itself, I wasn't I was an okay student, but I was definitely distracted. I was always staring out the window or drawing something or anything that was interesting. I could, learn and be okay at, but I was not a model.
Were you always tinkering? Like you're clearly like all this work on this boot, and you're like a spatial engineer of sorts. So were you always kind of like that, building things?
Yeah, I was really obsessed with building whatever I could. Like my favorite toy for the longest time was Legos, and we got a pretty good collection. And then I remember we kind of hit that age when all the kids in the neighborhood, Legos weren't for them anymore, and I went to a few garage sales and bought up all their stuff and had a couple nice, like the technical, like Technic stuff, and I spent, I don't even know how many. I remember my mom would come sometimes, like I'd be up in the middle of the night with a little flashlight, like digging through Legos, and they would hear me, and I'd just be building stuff, and they would come and like take my Legos away for a week or something. So I was constantly like wanted to build things, and it's kind of in me, I guess, and that's also part of, having the opportunity to be in the ski industry as a professional free skier, as that was kind of evolving and taking, becoming something, and then working with Forefront. That's really what got me started working with that small ski brand and having the opportunity to start to think about like ski design, and eventually that led to like fully designing skis, and even further going and building them, and then from there going and helping set up like a micro ski factory in Salt Lake City there.
Right. So that's been the trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll take me back to 16. Like, why did you stop the ski race program, and like, where'd you take it from there?
Yeah, I was the perfect candidate for the 1080 promotional video, Solomon Ski 1080. Like they came out with that, JP and all the new Canadian Air Force guys, and they had that promotional video. And I remember we went to the Panorama ski area really early season for a speed camp. We were ski racing, and up until then, like we were already kind of building little jumps and trying 360s, and like no idea, and we're just kids having fun. And even some of our coaches would like hit jumps with us, and they could do some 360s, and so we were already a few of us were pretty into that. And then suddenly I remember being in the ski shop, and this video came on, and I was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I watched it like 100 times, it's just on a loop. And pretty much that day I knew like ski racing was, I liked racing, and I had a lot of fun, and I appreciated the experiences and the technical training, but I was not a very competitive person, and definitely like a scrawny little kid. I was technically good at skiing around gates, but I definitely wasn't like a champion in the making. So after that, it was like I finished up that year of racing, and then all I wanted to do was jump and learn all these new tricks, because at that time, like even growing up in Canmore, surrounded by a bunch of different ski areas, like skiing was almost dead. There was only a handful of people that actually skied, and they were all in ski racing, and everyone else, like all the kids in the high school, anyone who went to the mountains, it was all snowboarding. Like in the 90s, it was crazy, skiing with skinny skis and racing, and no kid it wasn't cool. It was like the nerd, the ski nerd thing. And so at that point, to see a new style that was like exciting and new tricks and these new heroes, it was just like captivating, and it took me away.
Well, so how did you go from there to getting your first opportunity to be in the films and to be recognized that way?
Yeah, I got really lucky. I think I was trying really hard and working, my dad set up in the backyard. We had an awesome setup. We had a giant rope swing he made us, and the normal like Costco trampoline. My brother and I flattened about 3 of those over our childhood, but he built off of our deck like a diving platform off the 2nd story deck onto the trampoline, because he wanted us to just go crazy, I guess. But so I learned all the tricks, watched the videos, studied everything, was just obsessed. And he was really supportive. He would film a bunch of, we did some big air comps and early stuff with the freestyle, kind of Alberta freestyle kind of adopted this big air. They built one on the aerial site and went to a bunch of those early comps and got, some footage and just, I had another buddy in high school who was really into filming, and he had a somewhat decent camera for back then, and he put together some good stuff, and I basically made these sponsor me demo like VHS tapes. Like I remember putting like the original in the VCR and like transferring it over and recording it on the second VCR, like super awesome. But I sent those out and to randomly to companies. I had a kind
How
of
old are you at this time?
yeah, I was probably like 17. I was still in high school. I had another mentor who was like the sit ski champion of the world for many years, downhill racer, Stacy Kohut. And he actually was like, cause he's been through, you know, the industry, and he had sponsors, and he actually really helped me, wrote letters and helped like proofread my stuff. And we were sending them out to Oakley and Rosignol. And there was also a local ski shop, the Minode ski shop, Tatum's family shop there out of Banff. And Peter Minode, one of the owners, like saw this new kind of free ride jibbing trend that was coming up in skiing, and he put together like a team. It was really probably Canada's first like shop team free ride skiers, and I was like the youth junior kid on the team with some other really good skiers from that area that were all about 10 years older than me. And so yeah, between getting on the shop team and sending out these videos, I got some pretty basic like gear sponsorships, like good for back then for sure, and for being a young kid. And that eventually I kept filming with my friend, and then also got in with a few other like small time productions and started building up like a pretty good demo reel, I guess. And eventually I went to Argentina. I got invited down there with my good friend Andrew Shepard, who'd been like the kind of local legend, 10 years older than me, been filming and kind of pioneering that style of skiing, and like trying to make something out of it in that area at least. And his good friend Dustin Lindgren, who ended up working for Matchstick, he bought a 16 millimeter film camera and put together just randomly a trip to Argentina. So I went down there, I got invited, they brought me down, we did some filming, and with that kind of higher quality footage, and good push from the rep of Oakley, like the team manager of Oakley Canada, like really sending it to Matchstick and pushing, like you gotta get this kid on the program and start filming him. And that really was the way in.
Wow. So do you remember that early filming? Like how did you know how to do it? Just from watching all the other ones, like to go scope a line or to drop in and communicate, like.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big learning curve there, and I was with Andrew on that very first, like, that was the first substantial trip, first like ski trip out of the country, really, and like going somewhere exotic for me. And yeah, we were definitely looking back, like we didn't really, we got some really good stuff, but we didn't have the experience. Dustin was brand new with his camera. Andrew was like the leader because he'd been working, doing, you know, filming for 10 years already. And it was
so
just kind of learning
crew.
from him.
Yeah, you had a good crew.
Yeah.
And you guys were kind of creating it, so you're motivated that way.
Yeah. And we didn't even know, like Dustin didn't really have a solid, like what he was going to do with the footage. It never actually really went anywhere. It was just like him. He'd been to Argentina. He really liked it. It was really inexpensive at that time. And he just was like, yeah, called up his good buddy Andrew and said, let's go down there. I got this camera. And Andrew's like, oh, you got to bring this kid Eric. Like, he's coming up and he's really motivated, and put in the good work. Because Dustin, I had met him actually once he came through town. We actually went sled skiing on Boulder Mountain. And that, like, Andrew was I had another guy, Kevin Yurtis, he was like competing in the free ride comps, and also 10 years older than me. And between him and Andrew, really, like, they were getting me out. Like, I remember going to Minode's and buying trackers and skins and shovel and probe, and like they kitted me out and started bringing me out in the backcountry a little bit, and Andrew inviting us out to Revelstoke, and we went up Boulder sled skiing. That was like a powder article way back in the day. And I was just this, like 17-year-old kid that got towed up, and we built some jumps. And but yeah, it's an interesting, like, thinking back to it. There's so random. It's all
Everything
these
that comes
connections.
together, yeah.
But very fortunate.
So can you, I want to ask later what it was like to film your first matchstick part. But maybe that wasn't even the most significant one. Is there a line or two that stick out in your mind as things that you will always remember? Like, give me something something you're really proud of. And like walk us through like what it feels like to the whole day.
Oh man. I mean, there's a lot of, this has been,
You have so many lines. It's insane. And I can't even pick one because they're just one after another. I don't even get it.
yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest, and there's one I always think of, and for many reasons, but like, what was it, 2010? Actually, a good friend, James Heim, another guy who's been filming with Matchstick for,
Heimer.
yeah, Heimer. He really put together this trip to the Meager Hot Spring area, which is incredible mountain formation, volcanic, just north of Pemberton, and has this fantastic hot spring at the base. And a year or two prior to our trip, there'd been this massive, like one of Canada's largest landslides in recorded history, I think, like second or third largest. And it totally took out the whole valley and took out the road, the access you used to be able to drive to these hot springs. So they were just like inaccessible, and no one could get there. And at that time, we had a couple friends in around the Whistler area that we'd done a lot of filming with, that had a helicopter. They had a helicopter company and one helicopter. And in the winter, they were all about like finding these opportunities to work and film and fly us around. We did many trips to Braylorn, and in the summer they were utilizing the helicopter for more like industrial stuff, forestry, forest fighting, firefighting, power line stuff. So helicopter was relatively unused, so they were really excited and helpful. And we had this helicopter. We had an area that was no one could get to, incredible mountains, and like it was a total renegade. Not really allowed, but Heimer had this dream and vision and put together this amazing trip when we went out there.
Is this with Matchstick? Because I remember this.
Yeah, with Matchstick. And we were out there for almost, I think, 4 weeks. Like we were there for maybe 3 weeks and then took a break, flew home, and then came back in for another week. And it was a really good snow year and like huge amounts of snow. And right away when we flew in, I remember the first time, like it's just, there's such Meager Peak and the plinth and the Mount Job. There's just these like Alaskan fluted, spined out, like super big, gnarly ski descents that a lot of like the hardcore locals out of Pemberton snowmobile access. And we actually met them out there a few times. Like it's a huge endeavor to get out there and super impressive. But yeah, right away we saw like...
You met them with your helicopter?
Yeah.
At the banks of a hot springs?
Well, they didn't come to the hot spring because the hot spring's way out of the way. And they were just going there to ride.
But that's where you guys were camping.
Yeah,
right?
they were going there to ride these like insane sled mountaineering, skiing and snowboarding lines. Like probably, I don't know anyone else
that's
gets
insane
after it like
athleticism.
that. And yeah, we would see them like the first time we met them. We were just parked. We were looking at this one area, and we got dropped off to do a test, like check out a slope kind of beside where we wanted to ski.
So it was just you two, a filmer. Did you bring a guide? Did you bring people for safety?
Yeah, we had Ingrid, and we went through a couple guides. Like they brought them in. My buddy Marty Schaefer came in for a bit,
nice.
and we had 2 Gregs. And we just kind of hired guides as we could because they couldn't stay the whole time. But just kind of pieced it all together. And
nice work, Heimer.
Yeah, he's really organized and good at putting that kind of stuff together for sure. But yeah, those snowmobilers, like the first day we were up there and pretty early in the morning, and we got dropped off, and then suddenly our pilot Jake like radios. He's like, "Yeah, there's just like 3 snowmobilers just pulled up to the heli," and we're
Wow.
like, "What the? How the hell?" Because they had to make their own river crossing, and like it's like a 3-day epic
Wow.
just to get out there. And
Respect.
yeah, it's huge respect. So we like, yeah, that's like, yo, you guys ski this. Like, that's what they came to ski and
Yeah.
or ride. They were mostly snowboarders. And then, so we just moved down valley and did something else. And then one of the times we actually were skiing off of the Meager, like proper, the big spine wall. Those guys, yeah, it was like 7 in the, it's springtime, April. First light, and we're like we lift off and we fly into the alpine, and we're looking, and like we look down and they're like already almost at the top
No
on their
way.
snowmobiles. It was crazy. And then we had like a party shred with them. It was really, they were super nice. But yeah, the line is right off the summit of Meager down the shoulder. There was this like super steep spine face that then continued into like a massive spine. Like the whole line is well over 2,000 feet.
Wow.
But I got dropped off, and it was like the gnarliest downhill sidestepping ice crust from the sun, and like just thousands of feet of exposure, and just gripping just to like get into the top of it. And we had waited, like that was at the end of our trip. That was the very end, and that we knew like that was the jewel face of the whole area. And we patiently, we chipped away, built up our local knowledge in the snowpack and our confidence, and like just were waiting for the perfect day. And yeah, luckily we got it and got to ski that line. And it was just, yeah, every time I watch it, I'm like, get nervous. And it doesn't look, it's not like the craziest line, but it's just so steep and so exposed and so long. And yeah, I skied through and got through the spines, and it was just victory, shredding this huge continual spine out the bottom and getting to like the last little crux, and getting a little bit tired at that point because it's a pretty long run. And I'd been skiing on kind of the shaded, more of the kind of north aspect of the spine, and it tipped over, and I kind of airplane turned over to the more solar aspect, more of an east aspect. And after dropping that much elevation, was completely caught off guard by like a crust, basically a breakable crust. And I was going very fast above still pretty high consequence stuff. And I ended up actually blowing my knee, because I skipped out and just my one ski dug in and hyper compressed my leg. And so it was like that story of going from the highest high to the lowest low. And then I still had a long way to ski out of there to get out. And luckily I didn't really actually fall. I just kind of rolled over.
But
it was
you
just
felt
an
it go.
awkward, I was screaming at the top. It was one of the more painful things, because I didn't fully tear the ACL. I had like 80% tore it or something. So then the nerves are still there, and it was not nice. And that was the end of my trip and the end of my season. But yeah, that line, I look back and I'm like, I wonder if I would do that again.
Wow. That was an awesome story.
Yeah, these will all, like, this is the stuff I want to go into a bit more with this, like the film project with Matchstick. There's way too many stories, but we got to kind of like find those stories. And I think that's like going to be one that should be highlighted, just because for me it means a lot. And then it was like really the worst injury I've had in my career, knock on wood.
Just
wasn't
one
that bad.
ACL?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I've heard a lot of things, but that was the only surgery required repair. So significant for me. But I got away pretty luckily. Like, it was just the ligament was partially torn. It was a long story of how I dealt with that, but there wasn't much. I bruised tibial plateau, but in that, because the knee was so bent and hyper flexed, compressed, when it impacted, it didn't like mash up the cartilage or the meniscus. So that stuff, all that tissue that they can't really repair, they can just cut out, was all relatively okay. And so I made I think a very easy recovery just from having the ACL surgery, and came back and don't think of it too much. It doesn't bother me. So that's very fortunate.
It seems like skiing is so easy for you. Do you have any stories about actually like getting gripped and then moving through it, or, anything about overcoming fear?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always, the fear is what is part of the formula, I think. Like all these big lines, all the stuff in the films, like it's one of my favorite quotes from Hugo Harrison is, I remember him saying, it's like, yep, if you're not scared, it's not going to be in the movie. It's not going to make the movie. So, but yeah, you have to trust yourself, and you have like the whole activity that we do of skiing in the mountains, big lines and that kind of stuff is really an experience-based activity.
Dang.
And
The fridge just went on.
I know.
Sorry about that. Anyone listening?
Can we
Anyways,
unplug it?
I can try.
Pull it out.
Oh, did you hear that? That was the sound of freedom.
Lubrication.
He's so nervous. Yeah, right. He's been on just like PR train. But yeah, talk about fear and overcoming fear.
Yeah, I think I like fear is really a big part of the formula of what we do as professional skiers. You're basically challenging yourself, your abilities and your decision making and your skill set and your experience. So fear, really, you have to be very in tune with your fear, and you have to be willing to like deal with it. And yeah, every time you're scared, really, if you're doing something significant that's pushing your abilities. And
how do you know it's the right decision then? Like, how do you know when you're scared and it's okay, or you're scared and it's something to step off of?
I think that's the magic. I think now it's easy. It's a lot easier for me with so many years, well over a decade of doing what I do, and just to have that experience base. It's such a condition-dependent sport, and the variables of snow and avalanche, danger possibility is really like it's the ruling factor, and you have to be aware of it and pay attention. And I think having a lot of experience and getting away, getting lucky, getting hurt, seeing things happen, seeing bad accidents, you basically build up like that experience that allows you to look to when you're making your next decision. And really it comes down to like how you're feeling and how you feel about the whole situation. And the fear keeps it real, and it keeps you sharp. And yeah, for me, sometimes I just know, I'm like, yeah, I'm terrified, but I'm completely focused and I'm really comfortable and confident in this situation and environment. Yes, I'm scared of like what I'm attempting to do, but I also think back to everything I've done, and like I start trusting myself and my decisions. And
I've seen times where you come off of one air and like you barely touch down on another landing, and you're like taking off on one ski and you fully pull it off. Like how do you do that? Nobody does that.
No. Well, there's a lot of, I mean, that's just pushing your abilities. Like you're skiing or whatever you're doing to the maximum of what you can do. And
what do you attribute it to? Do you attribute it to like you're looking ahead, like you see where you want to go, like where in those moments, like what is it?
I think for me, the big part of that puzzle is taking the time to really study what you're about to do. And that's why like ski touring and pillow lines and these technical like terrain sort of micro features that I've really found a niche, or like that's what I love to do.
Yeah.
It gives you that opportunity where you just have so much time look and like study things from many different perspectives,
Get
take a lot
intimate
of
with the
photos
snowpack
and
the
yeah,
terrain,
and like you really start all the best stuff you see in the films is like that example of the meager line, like that's 4 weeks of work. Or
Yeah.
even last year, the one big line, we had one day in the heli out of Whistler, and like exactly, it was 4 weeks of going out every day we could on the snowmobiles and trying and trying and trying, and finally it was like we knew, okay, it's good, and you can.
What do you mean trying on the snowmobiles?
Well, just like you're out there every day and you're trying to like film and get information on what's happening with the snow.
And you're looking at the big
you're
stuff you
looking
wanna
at
do.
the big stuff, and you know, like I have the luxury of I've filmed around that area around between Pemberton and Braylorn, and so we know, you know, like
You've had time to
the
get intimate
kind of
with it,
hit
yeah.
list of where you want to try and go, and you have those experiences where you know what it takes, what kind of conditions. So and you basically are just trying to like put yourself out there to do what you can and observe, and then when the conditions really come together, and then hopefully you're organized and you can actually capitalize on that and
Totally.
put yourself in those situations.
I hate this question, but a lot of people ask it. So, how about avalanches? Have you been caught in an avalanche?
I mean, I definitely have been caught in a few avalanches. Never been buried, never like really under the snow. Very fortunately, I've been around some big avalanches. I've dug people out that weren't fully buried, but I've definitely seen, you know, you're in that environment and you're pushing it, and especially in the early years where you really didn't know enough, or you're just learning, like you get in bad situations that you might not even have realized that you're in. But fortunately, we got away with some things, and then now like the other argument is now you have so much experience and you get so comfortable, and then you become complacent. So it's always like trying to stay sharp. But yeah, I mean, what was it, 2 years ago? One of my best friends, Chris Rubens, and I got caught completely off guard in the Rockies on a fly-in base camp to the fresh fields, and you know, conditions were pretty good. There'd been a lot of wind, but everything there was just like locked down. It felt like super firm. You're barely, you know, you're just nice for skiing big lines, but not like really good powder. And basically a hard slab with some weakness down, not very common weakness. That particular slope was probably a bit of a sun crust because it was a shaded slope that just got a bit of light for the morning. And yeah, we were just boot packing up, like barely, like perfect boot packing, just towing in up this nice little steep head wall, kind of making the most out of the stuff we wanted to go ski. Got too hot, got too baked out, too much sun, and we're just like, oh, we'll just go up this little head wall, and it's got this nice like backlit, and it'll be a good little quick little shot here. And we had to cross a Bergschrund. It's all glaciated, and got on about like went way around this Bergschrund and up on the face, and I was breaking trail and just like felt really good. And suddenly it felt like hollow and weird, and I'm sinking in a little bit more. And I said to Chris, I'm like, hey, wait a second, like it's not, something has changed here. It's not very good. And I think we had just got to like a thinner part of this loaded pocket. There's some rocks close to where we were. And he's like, okay, yeah. He's just a few steps behind. He's like, I'll come and like check it out, what you're feeling, you know, because going first is really the only way once you have a boot pack, you don't really have the same sensation. And he took one more step, and this whole panel of the head wall ripped out probably 60 centimeters to a meter, and we were just like surfing. Had our skis on our pack, and suddenly we're accelerating backwards, going down the slope. Like just it was caught us by like so off.
So it broke off above you?
Yeah, pretty much we're right at the top. Like we tickled the thin spot, and it was like a really strong, hard slab, and just sitting on a sun crust from before the previous storm, and we just found the trigger. And yeah, it was terrifying because we'd walked around this huge, big bergschrund, and suddenly we're going backwards with our
Into a
skis on
hole.
our pack. And like I turned around, Chris was right pretty much beside me or just behind me, and like just watching this hard slab panel exploding into a giant crevasse bergschrund and launching out the other side. And like I just remember like jumping as hard as I could, like just waiting, just like, oh, hold on. And just like, when we both like, it was a negative, like we weren't going to go into it, but it basically was like
Huge hole.
surfing on a hard slab into a ice wall. Like it felt like getting hit by a car. Like basically just, we both just boom, like exploded, lost everything. We ended up like not buried at all. And luckily the filmers were in a position, they were not in the best spot, but they were just outside of what happened, and they were right there, like they instant help, but we were both on the surface. But yeah, that was one of the more terrifying experiences, and really just caught off guard. Like we were too comfortable. We just felt like everything, we hadn't seen any activity, and everything just felt really good. But when you get to those persistent layers that are buried, a meter down, and with a hard bridge snowpack, it's really,
You wouldn't have known.
you just don't. Yeah, it's so inconsistent. So
Yeah.
we're always trying to be very aware and cautious, and thinking as much as you can, like just what can go wrong, where you're at, situational awareness, terrain management. And that's like most of these trips, all the film trips, is we are always working with a guide, and that's like, the guide isn't guiding us. Let's say the guide might be having good recommendations, but the guide is really like helping us, analyze the snow, and also just like keeping everyone's focused in on I'm going to ski this line. The filmer's like, I got to get this shot. It's just so good to have a professional with a lot of experience and training in your crew, with the bigger picture looking. He doesn't care about the shot. He's like, whoa, why are they standing over there? That's ridiculous. And just to have like a safety, someone that's remove themselves from the activity of getting the shots, and with a lot of training is super important. And that's something.
Any shout outs to those guides? Because it's so true. The film skiers get all the glory, but there's so much behind the scenes. And I think I like to try to acknowledge the guides that are creating that safety.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many good guides, some that aren't. It's a really hard job for a guide, so because they don't get to ski anything.
Right.
They're not like,
and your
their
safety
normal,
is their responsibility.
Their normal ski guiding is like heli skiing,
right?
And they're going or ski touring, and they're taking people around, and they're skiing the runs first, and they're making all the decisions. And like, for them to get sidelined and just be like, okay, well, I don't think, I'm going to look at the snow, and what do you guys think? And like working with them. But some of them, it's all the personality, but some of them really, I think they appreciate like the amount of work and detail and the process that we're trying to do, and like all these great shots that everyone sees, like the backstory and the production that went on to get there is an impressive amount of work a lot of the time. So the right guide who sees that and can appreciate it, they're usually really great to work with. But yeah, we've had, Marty Schaefer, Kapow, he's awesome to work with because he's also a very good skier. There's so many. Even my buddy Kevin Yurtis, who is one of my mentors, now he's a guide. I've worked with him a lot at the camps, and Martin Lefebvre, another Canadian in the Banff area, Kirk Becker, and Brent Phillips on the coast, Isaac Kamek, and he's at a Revelstoke now. Like there's a lot of the new era of these ski guides in Canada. They're all fantastic skiers and hard workers, and they love, they love actually like teaching and explaining it's not just like they're the guide and you do what they say, and like they're that kind of era of guiding, I think, is phased out. The ACMG has evolved. I'm just referring to all the Canadian stuff because that's what I know, but yeah, there's a lot of great guides out there that will work very well with a film crew and do an amazing job and become an essential part of the team.
Totally. So take me back to that first film shoot with Matchstick when you got your big break. How old are you? Paint us the picture.
Well, this is I think it's one of my favorite memories and stories because of the struggle. It's always the journey. If you have if you have adversity and like it's a struggle, and then in the end you pull it together somehow and make it happen. That's like
so much sweeter.
Yeah, you have that gratification. It's like if everything is always easy, then okay, that's great. But so yeah, the first year where Matchstick was like, okay, basically my friend Dustin Lindgren, the filmer, and I got in at the same time. Like they saw Dustin's footage and they saw my skiing in the footage, and they're like, all right, these two guys are, keen and they have some potential. And Dustin is like, has a long history of, working with his brother on kayak film projects. And like, he's really, he likes to find new things, and he's adventurous, and he's like one of those people that's just a connector. Like he'll stop on the side of the road and start talking to someone, and next thing you know, that guy's like knows someone, and you've got like a sweet line on whatever it is that he knows. And like, so he's just one of these
in
people.
The flow, sounds like.
And he had been very like keen, and this is right when Micah heli skiing started basically, and he'd heard about the new tenure and this new operation, and like in the Rockies, but it has snow, and he was just amped about it. He's like, he called them and basically talked to the marketing guy and like got some agreement, no minimums on the heli and this and that, and like worked this deal and put that in to Matchstick with myself. And it's like, okay, yeah, you guys should go. And they just sent the two of us like on our own. No one. It's not even like a real Matchstick trip, but they're like, oh, well, Dustin's got some line. Eric's got like, I think $3,000. It was from Oakley. It was all the money. Like they finally at that point, or not finally, but at that point they were like, okay, here's like a retainer. And I was just like, I'm going to take that and put it. I want to go filming. Like this is my big chance.
Are you 17, 18?
Yeah, probably. I was 21 then. I was 21. So a couple years after. It takes time.
After like, so
going to Argentina,
the Argentina trip,
and this, and yeah.
So had you decided to go to college at all, or
no?
Were you focused? Were you like trying to do this pro ski thing?
100% driven. I never even considered. I basically left high school as soon as I possibly could. I finished like a semester early with the bare minimum amount of credits and just got the heck out of there so I could go skiing. And yeah, that was my primary focus. So this was like the big break, and to get like them, the call from the Matchstick guys, like, okay, yeah, you guys should go. You figure it out. It's all up to you. And so yeah, Dustin and I ended up in Revelstoke, and like later in, this was in probably April. By then, the whole thing had got pushed back, and all the trials and the process of just getting there. And we ended up there, and it was like the very end of their season, and conditions were so it was raining, and we didn't know. And then suddenly, like, our opportunity for this deal that the marketing guy had promised Dustin with no minimums on the helicopter, which basically meant you could go in, and if it's bad weather, you're not paying for the helicopter, because the standard way of doing it is as soon as you're there, even if you're not using the helicopter, you got to pay an hour or an hour and a half a day.
Which is approximately. Yeah,
back then it's like probably, it was a bit cheaper back then, but I think we would have been paying $1,000 a day or something.
Well, it's a lot cheaper. Usually it's like $3,000 a day minimum for an hour.
But yeah, so suddenly that deal was gone because their helicopter agreement or contract with the heli company was over, And so the helicopter had to come out or something. So basically we're sitting there in the rain, and suddenly we're thinking, okay, well, we can go in there for like a week and afford that. I'm going to pay for the whole thing. There's no other athletes. There's nothing. I brought in Andrew Shepard, my mentor, because he was a big part of all of this. And I needed someone to ski with and someone that could help with the whole thing. And also Damien Cromwell, another great friend. He was the photographer, brought him in because like we had a helicopter. So, but yeah, we were all in Revelstoke, and the minimum deal was going, and it's bad weather, and basically like with $3,000, we could rent a snowmobile and film out of Revelstoke for a month and try and get something. Like, are we gonna fly in there and sit for 2 days and fly out and have nothing, and that's the end of it? And in the end, we just pulled the trigger at last, 11th hour, drove all the way out to Mica Dam and tried to negotiate. And it was this big, I was just pretty young at that time, no idea. And Dustin was really hammering, trying, and yeah, flew in there. It was kind of whatever the first day. And we had their guide, Craig Ellis, who also was a super interesting guy and actually did a really good job. And yeah, we ended up getting 2 perfect bluebird days, no wind, pretty good stability. And we flew all over the tenure and just got some really, one of the best shots. I still a really good line right out of the gate. And that
without any study, anything, you just sent it.
Well, yeah, we studied it and lined it all up, but just to go in there for 2 days and get those kind of conditions and then ski a good line, a long line with big airs, not crash and not have any issues, look back at that, it was that was, I mean, you can't go anywhere for 2 days to go skiing. That's in the wilderness, that's crazy. And so it all, we had a golden horseshoe. And we got really not a ton of footage, but for 2 days, in a small crew, skeleton crew, 1 camera and a photographer, we did a fantastic job. We took advantage of the fortune of good conditions. And yeah, that was it. I sent that film in, and those Matchstick guys were super pumped, and they invited me down to the final. It was Super Park 6, the last super park they ever had down in Mount Bachelor. So I ended up down there and hanging out with Abma and got to know, that was the year Candide did the insane cork 9 to the rail. I don't even know what the tricks, I don't know tricks, but I was hitting all the big jumps, so I got some nice shots off jumps, and that combined, I just had a mini 40-second segment in that first Matchstick movie I was in, the yearbook.
That was the one, huh?
Yeah.
No way.
But though they were...
You and Ingrid.
Yeah, they were really pumped. Yeah, Ingrid killed it that year. She went to Bella Coola with Hugo and Abma, and that was Abma's first big year too.
Huh.
And so I just had this fraction. I remember going to Festival in Calgary and watching the film. I hadn't seen anything, and I was so pumped. And then I watched the movie, and it's oh... all that stuff, and it's 30 seconds. I shared a part with Vinnie Dorian and Yannick B, but it was awesome, and that really opened up. That's how I got in, and they were psyched that I was some young kid that could ski lines and hit jumps. So it was kind of, at that time, that was the cutting edge, bringing the park to the backcountry, or the jibbing to the backcountry, which I never actually ended up doing.
Wow, that was awesome. So it was 10 years of that.
Yeah.
How did you make this? It was that, and then all of a sudden you were this new guy again who was skinning for all of his lines. How did you make that transition?
Well, yeah, once again, because I've been ski touring since I was a teenager, and always on trekkers and limited gear, and we did some big days and figuring it out, but still pretty inexperienced. And it was actually Dustin Lindgren again to really, through his connections and networks and Damien Cromwell, we got lined up to go into Century Lodge at Golden Alpine Holidays. I think that was 2006, 2007. And then suddenly we're flying into this like amazing setting and pillows all around and perfect snow, and we're ski touring on trekkers, and like we got a bunch of really good footage. And that's where we learned, like Rubens, myself, Abma, a bunch of Heimer, like we really like putting ourselves in these backcountry lodges and touring around the pillow zones for a week to 10 days to 2 weeks at a time. That I look at that as like our learning, our education on like ski touring, filming, and pillow lines. And it became very clear like that if you want to get really good conditions, easy access, and lots of shots, that's the place to go. And that eventually, like I remember struggling, modifying trekkers and trying all this stuff, and I had some Technica like race boots and dremeling, and I put some kind of walk mode, and just like wanting to be able to go to be more efficient, because it was super painful. And luckily we're in our 20s, so you don't feel pain, but like if I had to go back to that equipment now, it'd be horrible. And yeah, eventually that led to I remember
Frankensteining your boots.
Yeah, it was early season, probably festival time or whatever's premiere time. I was in Calgary. I went to the big like mountain equipment co-op, and that's when I first saw the Dynafit. I think it was the Zeus boot at the time, which was like the first like real 4-buckle overlap boot, walk mode, and it had interchangeable soles, which I was like, this is sweet. Like because I didn't even care about, I had no intention of the bindings, the tech bindings at that time. I was just like, I want a boot that I can walk in and be a bit more comfortable and do more skiing while I'm out there. So that kind of planted the seed. And then I think it was the next year, I contacted the Dynafit North American guys through another shop in Whistler, one of the long time shops there, the Escape Route, Jason and James. The owners kind of put me in touch with the North American guys, and they, well, let's send you a pair of the Titan boots, and we'll throw in some of the vertical FT12s, like their highest din, burliest binding at the time. And yeah, I got the boots and started skiing in them and did a bunch of like.
And that was what year? Ish?
2010, 2011. Yeah, because we'd been up at the lodges for like 3 years already at that point, or 4 years. But yeah, I got the boots, did a bunch of mods, was skiing them early season, and then we flew into Meadow and Century. We had a 2-week trip, and I mounted up one of my early pairs of Renegades. I had 2 pairs, one with Alpine bindings and my Trekkers, and the other pair with these FT12s. And it was the first film trip of the season, so okay, like we're starting out pretty conservative. We got to figure out the snow. We got to get warmed up. We got to, just get our legs under us, really. And so I just started skiing in the Dynafit bindings. And instantly I was like, wow, this is
so much
better and so much lighter and quick to transition, and no more trekkers in my pack, and no more braking trekkers. And
Alpine day wreckers.
yeah, so and I just started filming in them, and it was great snow, and we just kind of ramped up. And after that first week at Meadow, I had like done the entire week in the Dynafit bindings, in the Dynafit boots, and
with no issues.
And I was like, all right, let's keep going. And then that was the entrance into it all. And I never looked back. I don't have Alpine gear anymore.
So you didn't have any problems with the pin bindings?
I mean, there was a learning curve. I had I remember after a few days, and we're up at the hut there, so the skis are living outside, and suddenly I'm walking around. We actually had some nice weather, so we were up in the Alpine on hard snow, kind of wind slab going across this ridge, kind of kicking in, and suddenly I'm like walking out of my skis, and they're locked, and it shouldn't happen. And I didn't really know what was going. I had no experience. So I'm like, did I break like the little springs, or started looking, and it turned out just being that super common problem where if you use them day after day after day and they never thaw out, you get the ice block underneath the little spring assembly of the jaws of the toe piece. And it took me a while to, like, 20 minutes up there, and then I saw, I'm like, oh, there's a huge chunk of ice underneath. That makes sense. I cleaned it out and then just kept going. And I mean, I had a few popping out of the heel on some weird impact where a normal binding wouldn't, but overall, like, I was getting the shots I wanted. I was skiing everything I wanted, and
hitting it pretty hard.
And
Like
hitting it,
you've
yeah.
really tested these things.
Hitting it really hard, and it worked. And
So did you hear that, folks? Like, and I would agree with that too. Like, as long as you make sure that this binding doesn't have ice, I've never had a problem. But when I've seen problems happen is when there's ice buildup that you weren't aware of.
yeah, it's a super common, like, when I'm coaching up at the camps, and it's like one of the main things I always, because I see it happen all the time, and it mostly happens when you're walking up and you think it's locked, and then suddenly your skis are coming off. And yeah, it's just a learning curve. It's like alpine bindings. If you don't know to clean off the snow off the bottom of surface of your sole of your boot,
It's not
you step in, you're going to come out because
Right.
the binding's not properly closed. So like anything mechanical
take care of your gear.
thing
It'll take
that's
care of you.
in the snow, yeah, you gotta learn the little details, and once you do that, usually it's pretty good. But
Wow, it's a really cool story.
but then from there, after that trip, so we filmed for 2 weeks. I came out, I had all this GoPro footage. I drove to Canmore, had a shower, did my laundry, had a flight to Europe the very next day, kind of invited myself to ISPO. And that was like the next day, and on the plane, I edited this little freeride touring edit with this stuff and flew right into ISPO, into Munich, never been there. Took a train, got to the trade show. It's like 9:00 at night. It's all locked up. I'm walking around with the ski bag and backpack and duffel bags, and right into like the Dynafit party. I found a way in. Some janitor let me in a side door, and like I'm right into this party, and like all my
So you weren't
stuff.
even one of their athletes at this point.
I was like pushing. I had met the brand managers, and they had come through Canada through that shop, the Escape Route. We had a nice dinner and like kind of made a face-to-face, established an interaction or connection. And then yeah, I was like, I'm coming. Like, I showed up there and right into the party scene, and yeah, that was fun. But the bottom line was I had this awesome.
You were going to revolutionize.
I had this
the sport.
edit, and I
Right.
am like, look at, like, this is what your bindings, because
No one's ever done that.
well, I
Not even
think in
close.
Canada and North America, people were skiing on them pretty aggressively on fat skis. And in Europe, people were skiing huge descents and like mountaineering, like crazy stuff. Really good stuff had been done on the Dynafit system. But in North
Not
America,
massive pillow
no,
lines, though.
it's different. But it was the boots that held it back. The bindings were unchanged at that point. They were the same Fritz Bartels original design, like some cosmetic stuff, but like it's a 30-year-old design. They're still making it to this day in many imitations throughout the industry. It's such a well-designed, engineered product. I mean, it's not perfect, nothing is, but that says a lot. And but no one had, the boots hadn't been developed into like a skiing performance boot until that point. And then I was just, once again, like the perfect guy in the perfect spot, the perfect age, doing the right thing, and it all came together. And I went there and I was like, yeah, like, look, like your stuff, look at what can go, like we're in a different world. Like they're running up doing 3,000 meters in a matter of hours in spandex on skis that are 67 millimeters wide and 160s. And they're all about just like, that's the core of the brand, is the racing. Like a lot of European industries. Yeah. Like ski industry stuff. It's all alpine or randonnée, anything competitive. That's the highest end, the top, the cutting technology, all the trends. But in North America here, where people just wanting to go ski touring to get to powder because there's no ski resorts. There's a handful of ski resorts and they're all busy and blown out. And like, if you want to go ski fresh powder, you go ski touring.
You got to earn it.
And so, yeah, it was like that link between those two worlds. And
So what did it take for them to actually listen to this punk Canadian kid that they could care less?
well, it took a few years actually. Like that happened, and I showed them all this stuff. And the craziest thing I found out, I think it was the next year, I did all this, and I came back to ISPO, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we want to introduce you to this our new engineer, Fred Anderson," and he was this Swedish guy, my age, and he used to compete on the world tour, and he's this like, pretty hard charging skier from Sweden, and he had come up with the ideas for the Beast, and like they had him, like he was there when I first started talking to them, but they didn't know me or trust me. I wasn't invited into this circle of trust, so like I had all these like, oh, I want, like we could make this system, like beef up the heel, and I had like very amateur and very immature, but I had some
You had the
desire.
passion for sure.
And they're like, oh yeah, well here's this guy, and look at what he's doing. And I was like, are you kidding me? He's been here the whole time. Like, so yeah. Then Fred and I had a couple good years of hanging out, and I would just go to Europe and show up at the office, and people would be walking around, all these Germans like really proper, and everyone's professional. It's like a real company, and there's this scruffy guy, beard and big huge skis and kind of weird looking, and just walking around like in all these like in the testing facilities, and they're like, who are you? Like, why are you here? And I'm like, well, I'm working with you guys now. Basically, I would sleep on the couch in the office, or Fred had this tiny little flat, like half the size of this hotel room, and I'd sleep on the floor, and like we would work. We had a really good time, and that was the beginning of the whole Beast project, and that was the next chapter for me, like getting in and really like I did a lot of testing, and I didn't do any of the design or engineering. Like I'm not that clever or trained to do any of that, but it was awesome that this such a hardcore uphill performance company had like gone in this crazy tangent, and they did a relatively good job. Like the Beast was released at least 1 year too early, and it, looking back, like they could have taken that extra year and really polished and found all the little intricacies, and like it's such a complicated mechanism, so it suffered from a lot of problems after it was released, because it, like as it came out, we already knew a bunch, it's like, well, there's these issues, and so that was a big learning experience for me, and I think for the company as well. But in the end, it was a lot of fun, and that was like the next chapter with Dynafit for free riding and for myself. And then it, like at the same time, that actually was the Vulcan, was the free ride boot. Their first like real free ride boot was coming, and I was really pushing, going on those same trips down to Italy, and really like pushing on the footwear team. There's a couple of really good guys that were inviting me and like listening, and we would argue, but in the end they were open at least to these crazy ideas, I guess, or not ideas, just like a different perspective from the European
and theories. And
yeah.
I love it.
But yeah, so that all kind of played out and had a lot of fun, and then it kind of didn't go stagnant, but there was definitely a few years of like the footwear team all left, and there was a new team, and there just wasn't there wasn't any more like personal connection. I was kind of still forcing myself in there, but they weren't, we didn't have a good working relationship. And eventually those people left, and they brought in another new team, and that's who we're working with now. And that's the only, like, there's two major reasons, or like the two things that allowed this new Hoji boot to really come into the product line were obviously Fritz mentoring and working endlessly, so much passion and effort and just genius ideas, and applying all of his knowledge and experience into the project. And then the new footwear team, like the leader, Claudio, he's 100% like Fritz, and him and I just like, and every time we go and work with him, it's just like, we need this, we need that, we need this is what it costs, this is how we can do it. And it's just like very transparent, yes, no, what can we do? And like this boot really, they only started industrializing it or like really bringing it into the product line. It's like barely been over a year. So it's really,
It's like all
or
that
like a year and a
buildup.
half. Like it, yeah. And Fritz and I had been working on it. This is now like 4 years, and we'd been, we were presenting it and we had all these ideas, but it took the right team, the new guy, Claudio, coming in really to like, he's
Take
like,
it to
these
them.
guys are super passionate and they're working and this is working and we need to do this. And he just like took it by the reins and did an incredible amount of work and aligned the team. And now, yeah, the end result, the product, the Hoji Pro Tour is, I'm in love with it. I'm so happy. It's blowing me away every day. And like just today, having a big group of people, 20 pairs probably on the snow, all different people, different feet, and just skiing in them. And like people are happy and it's working. And it's like today was like a bit of a validation of like all those 4 years of hard work and fighting and effort and testing and breaking and the journey, awesome journey. But it's like, it's turning the corner to like, okay, we've started something.
Yeah, you revolutionized something.
Yeah,
So, I mean, what have you learned over? You didn't go to college, and now you've been working with this big brand with budgets and across cultural differences, and you don't speak the same languages. There's Italians and there's Germans. Like, what have you learned from all of this? Would you say on the business side?
international diplomacy. No, it's like, yeah, it's been a huge learning curve, and it all started even with Forefront, working with them in Salt Lake, and just like an idea is great and making something that works is awesome, but then taking that and like building it into an efficient way of making something, industrializing it and creating a product that has a following and like people want it and it does something, it performs well. Like there's like so many levels and steps,
And
and
it fits within the branding.
yeah, obviously
and
with
the
the bigger
materials and
company like Forefront is easy because I'm on the ground level and it's a very small
Yeah, you're not
niche
going to
company.
right.
And so
How much money does it cost? Like, how much money do you think it's cost to create this and then to manufacture it? And then every size is like another $100,000, right? Just for the
yeah,
molds and
you're
all the
talking
different geometry.
Yeah, there's like $1 million+ that go into developing any new ski boot, and this one for sure, because a lot of new things, even the lock mechanism and the stamped aluminum, and like with Fritz's engineering and the standard of what's in normal ski boot production, we've pushed that up to another. There's premium materials and processes and more tolerances and more engineering, and it's an intricate. Fritz's, one of his great quotes is a ski boot's a little machine, like a ski touring boot, because it has to move, it has to lock together, it has to. And previously ski boots are thought of as just it's like a footwear thing, and it has to look nice, and you have to be able to put it on, and it has to work. But like, I think this is we've kind of brought in even like a more technical and more refined, like we need to make it this way and it has to stand up to these forces and this is why, and it's really fun for me and for Fritz, I think, because it's like really true to the Dynafit. Dynafit is known for the bindings, which the bindings are Fritz. It was originally Low Tech was the company, which was acquired by Dynafit, and Fritz has been working with them ever since. And his whole dream was he calls himself lazy, but he didn't want to have to suffer so much. He wanted more efficient. He's like, there's got to be a better way. And it was all through his drive was through skiing, and that like the innovation came from a skier demanding more out of their equipment. And then this boot is like another chapter, and it's very true to his. That's why he jumped on board, and that's why he's worked so hard, and that's why he continues to be, a fundamental part of this project, because I think he really can relate to like what I wanted. and he
Yeah,
sees.
sounds like you guys are two peas in a pod.
Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, the international business, it's the bigger a company is, the more managers, the more people, the more marketing, the more like it's hard. It's hard to really align people, or like if you're a skier and you put this boot on, you'll immediately go, wow, that's the range of motion. Boom, lock it down. Wow, it's like feels I could ski on a ski on, and like it's a very tangible.
I'm so jealous. So they haven't made a size that I can actually test, but I'm just so curious to know if it's actually a 120 flex.
Next year, or not even. It'll be sooner than that. They're working on all the size ranges now because it's like an enormous amount of work just
of course,
to do all this.
I just want to know if it's stiff enough.
I think that's the thing with this boot in particular. It was never from the beginning of the actual product that we have created, not the prototypes that Fritz and I built, but like this boot was slated to be a classic ski touring boot. So it's never designed to be like the ultra stiff, crazy alpine race equivalent. It's meant to be a ski touring boot that has a very clear focus on downhill skiing performance. So removing the play and actually creating a very nice connection between the cuff and the lower shell. More responsive, more fine-tuned in this nice, like a smooth, progressive flex thing gets thrown around way too much. But we wanted that like good positive feedback and input and just like a good ski performance. And it is stiff enough for most everything I'm doing. I've been pleasantly surprised, but in the end, it was never meant to be like a high performance, super stiff alpine freeride crossover boot. And that'll come based out of this system. I'm pretty certain of that. So
you've got the skeleton now, clearly.
Yeah.
And you've got the technology, the machine has been built.
Yeah.
And
it's just going to get refined and become slicker and lighter and stronger and better. And nice. That's my dream anyway.
Well, you're so passionate. It's so fun just to watch your brain work. It's awesome. Well, I want to ask you about the pants down always, but I want to like switch gears a little bit and ask about Jen. Like give some props to Jen. Like
behind every man stands a great woman. Right?
Well, not just that, but like this woman is one of the greatest skiers of all time. And not enough people know just how rad she is. Jen suffered from a few tragic, like, just circumstances, I guess. She was one of the pioneers.
She was a pioneer, and she...
Will you just take a minute to kind of tell her
Jen, story? One of Canada's premier, like, groundbreaking female skiers.
And not just good for a female, like...
Yeah.
One of the best skiers I've ever seen. When I first competed, I watched her ski, and it was so solid. I had no idea it was a female.
Yeah, and she used to ski with the boys in Whistler, in the 90s, the hardcore skiers of Whistler, and Jen was in the posse hitting Air Jordan and all these big cliffs. But yeah, she obviously honed her skills skiing with the best of Whistler, and then the comp scene, the kind of extreme and big mountain, world tour stuff was evolving, and she got into that, and she's good at being competitive and like focusing in on those situations. Now 20 years later, she's moved away from competing, and now she's coaching for the junior team. But
they're so lucky.
They're very lucky, and she's a great coach, and she loves it, and it's awesome to see her.
But she is one of those faces that a lot of people don't know that should.
Yeah. Well, and you compare, like, if you she was at the same time and same results as Hugo Harrison. I think she even won the tour on extra time, the Freeride World Tour, like 3 titles, and yet not being good at the game of like promoting yourself and creating opportunities and moving into filming, or like she just didn't have anyone help her, or she didn't have it in her to pursue that. But like, if you compare her success competing to Hugo's at the same time, and what, like, Hugo's nothing taking away from Hugo, he's one of the best of all time. He changed the sport. He charged lines harder than anyone. You could put his film segments from Yearbook and Hit List and from 15 years
They'd
ago,
still
14
stand
years
up, for
ago, and they
sure.
would be the best big lines in any of the films that come out next year.
For sure.
And he just like
And that
another
goes the
pioneer.
same for Jen.
And Jen,
she
yeah.
would blow away with all of us.
Yeah, Jen.
All the competition right now, as far as hard charging, line skiing.
Well, I don't know if she's she's still ripping, but she's definitely like,
No, I mean her then.
yeah, her then of,
would
yeah.
still be very much.
Yeah, but she just never got the opportunity. She
Right.
worked with her brands, didn't like it's the Canadian back then too. Like, I remember being a Canadian, it was like all the marketing, all the budget, everything went to the US. Like, it's such a bigger market. And like, as a Canadian trying to be an athlete in an obscure like action sport in the late 90s, early 2000s, you got like some free skis. And meanwhile, there's people in the US that I think were doing, you know, they had more behind them, more budgets, bigger budgets, and through the companies. So that would, maybe if she was in the US, she would have, I don't know if that would have played a part. But yeah, she definitely is the unknown legend for what she accomplished and how she skis, and just her personality. Like, she's very, very nice to hang out with. So it's, I wish that, you know, if you could.
He
turn
finally
back,
at least put a ring on it.
yeah.
How long did that take there, Hoj?
Yeah, but you know, I'm a busy guy, and treat her mean, keep her keen. No, no, yeah, it was time, but now we gotta go the next. My philosophy is I did there's the 3 rings of marriage, you know, and I you know, set up the we have the engagement ring. That's the first step, and it's very exciting. And
But how long have you dated? How long did it take to
Well,
give her that?
that was like 8 or 10 years, and then but I'm away most of the time. And then the second ring, the wedding ring, is quite important, obviously, and that's where you spend all your money, and it's a big deal. And then I just skipped that one, and I went to the third ring of marriage, and no one talks about that one.
Yeah,
It's
what's
not
that one?
celebrated. It's a suffering.
Oh,
It's a good guide,
that sounds like a
guide joke.
grandpa analogy.
It's a guide joke.
Oh.
The 3 rings of marriage.
Oh. Well, I mean, I've also wanted to know, like, with all these incredible segments, what are your best memories? Were you ever like really stoked on a segment? I don't know many athletes that were totally excited about what they saw come out in the films. Like, when you think back, what are your best memories from all these films? We obviously, as the audience, have them, but were they like the making of them? Were they the celebratory, you know, seeing them come out? You know, what's your perspective on all those?
Well, I took it pretty personally, and back most of, not the first half of my time doing this, you know, we were shooting on film, and you'd shoot all winter long and never see anything, and then the film would come out. So, I mean, Matchstick did it the one year with the push and pull.
Mm-hmm.
They did 2 edits and 2 films, and one was an athlete edited film, and the other was their classic,
Mm-hmm.
you know, film for the tour. And that kind of opened my eyes, you know, just going and like watching all that footage that you'd worked so hard doing or capturing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always super rewarding. So I made a big, you know, I would pay out of my own pocket and go down and fly to Tahoe and visit Gaffney and sit in his basement for a couple days and just like check out everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then build these athlete edits like separate from the film. And those always came out as a DVD extra, you know, before the internet was really going or whatever it was. And I'm super glad I did that, because now looking back and like for this next project, those are like the cream of the cream. And those are the reason a lot of those segments have lines that weren't in the film. Maybe they weren't the greatest or most spectacular, but it was because of the effort that went into them and the personal like memory and satisfaction and like, oh, that meant a lot to me. Like that was really hard, or that was an epic day or what. And like, I would always put
The stories.
all of those in. Yeah. Not really capturing
yourself.
capturing the story, but just because you were stoked that you did that.
Yeah.
And part of that. And then, I think every year, like there's a few years I didn't when I only filmed a certain amount and that really made it into the film. And there's a few years where I didn't build those edits because I was by then it was later and I could preview the edits or the film and quite happy. But yeah, I mean, every year is different and every year you have your ups and downs. There's definitely years where like everything came together and you had like 3 good trips and then you have 10 minutes of like, how can you even cut any of these shots? Like they're all wonderful and a lot of fun, but I don't know if there's one segment that really like stands out as like better than any of the others, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty rad to be able to say. This one, we're getting down to the end, I promise. But I think a lot of people want to know 2 different things. Like, there's a lot of young dads that listen to my podcast. So, any advice for raising a kid that loves the outdoors? And then also, like, what's your take on this whole social media movement? And like, how do you deal with it? And what's your thoughts on it?
Oh, these are such loaded questions.
No, they're not.
I'm glad you saved them for the end. No. Yeah, I mean, the older I get now, I'm in my mid 30s and every year I think I look back to my childhood and I have so many fond memories and like the crazy things that my parents did and the encouragement and just support, never pushing me, but like if they saw I was really into something and interested, they would allow me and encourage me to figure out something to do with that. And I'm very fortunate. Like I just smile when I think back to my childhood. It's not always perfect, but there's so many cool things, and especially with my father, because he was a bit of a madman, and like he would, like in a couple of the houses we lived in, he would climb up. He'd find 2 giant trees, climb up 40 feet in the trees higher than the house, string a line across and hang a giant hemp rope and build us like a massive rope swing. And we would like our final, like kind of the house we lived in the end, we had this massive, you would climb up, he put a ladder up on the shed, you'd throw the rope up to your brother or friend, and then you run across the shed and jump over the neighbor's fence and do this giant like figure 8 loop of the entire yard. And this is like, and then he could climb, I remember like he could climb the rope. He was a gymnast and he was super strong. And he was really just like showing me like what you can do. And so I spent years learning, and eventually I could climb the rope and then I would climb it twice and then I'd climb it with no feet and like, or walking on the hands. If you can teach your kid how to walk on their hands and do handstands, like he was from his gymnastic background as a youngster, like he was always just like providing these inspirational challenges of like physical
and leading
skills.
by example, it sounds like.
Yeah, and we're like, oh, you guys want a trampoline? Yeah, I used to have trampolines in the gym. Yeah, here's a backflip. Here's a front flip. Here
now,
like,
jump off the second
yeah.
story
Oh,
deck.
you guys, you're not going high enough. Yeah, what if I go down to the hardware store, buy a 2x12, and then frame up an A-frame structure off the side of the deck, so you can just like run up the deck stairs, jump on the railing, run and jump off this diving board, do a double backflip, land, jump off the trampoline. Like I'm surprised I can even walk. Actually, my knees aren't worn out because I would do that every summer.
Well, it shows that he didn't also have fear. I feel like so many parents, they're always like, be careful. Yeah. And it almost instills this like, oh, I'm supposed to be afraid. And then you adopt that. Yeah. So it sounds like something incredible that you learned from him was like that anything is possible, because you don't really, it doesn't seem like you have fear.
No, I have lots of fears, but yeah, it's that like giving an example, teaching them a way of doing something, and then letting them expand on that and like encouraging that. And those kind of things as a father, like, yeah, that without that, I wouldn't have
awesome.
ended up being the way I am at all. Like, and my mother, yeah, she wasn't doing those physical skills of strength, feats of strength, but she didn't never
Held you
hindered
back.
any of
Yeah.
that. She was super, into it. So
Thanks, Mama and Papa
Yeah.
Hoji.
yeah, big thanks.
And then what about the social meds?
I mean, it's really a hard one for me. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, and somehow I've survived this far without committing. I'm on there a bit, and I try, and like, it's just, I feel like I'm super fortunate to have grown up when I grew up. Like, we didn't have any phones. My family I barely had a computer by the end of high school. I wrote all my final exams with a pencil, filling in squares or circles and writing an essay by hand, and no phones at all. Like, so and that was the freedom of, we were just in the woods playing and doing stuff, building whatever we wanted,
Yeah.
and just being completely free and creative and unaware of like all the whatever else is happening in the world. You're a bit ignorant, but that's the beauty of being a child. You shouldn't have to know about everything. You should be focused in on your own self growth.
Discovery, yeah.
Yeah, and so and it's frustrating in our modern world, like, and we're all I'm a super hypocrite. I'll sit there on my phone and I'll be sitting with friends, and you just get sucked into this
Instagram-istan is what I like to call it.
something
Deep.
something that doesn't exist where you're at, and it's not that important. And previously in the world, you would never even have that distraction. So, but it is the information era, and like the amount of self-learning I've done with even machining or any, like, it's a double-edged sword.
Totally.
Anyone can learn anything. You can find stuff. You have to build up a filter and learn how to learn and decipher through crap, and there's a lot of wasted time, but it is incredible that it's providing people with this
It's another tool.
information. It's
a
another tool. And the social media, it's fun. Like, you get to see what your friends are doing. There's not enough time in the day to talk to everyone and call everyone, and it's it keeps you connected, but it's a little too much. Like, this constant, like, everyone connected all the time and constantly working and getting back to people, and like the demand on your own personal life is incredibly high for the amount of time and effort, if you actually want to like fulfill everything, every request and everything you should be looking at or doing or liking or whatever it is. But yeah, I'm a bit of an old school perspective on it because I grew up without any of that.
But you're creating in another way. Like, you've put all that creative into engineering a new boot. So I think we all have a certain amount of attention and focus and creativity, and it shows just where yours is going.
Yeah.
So it's just an
I do-
alternative.
I do the best when I'm not in an environment with
Distractions.
online connection. Like, all these lodges, most of them now, they're starting to have satellite internet, and that's kind of sad. But most of the times you're up there and there's nothing, and you're just focused on the people you're with and what you're there to do and the fun you're going to have and the challenges and the chores and whatever it is, and that's it. And the same when I'm working. All the work I've done is either in my own little mini basement shop with no internet connection, or in Austria, my buddy Fritz's with very limited. There's no one's calling me, nothing, and I can just focus in on what I want to do. And
Right.
the creative process, it takes so much time. Like, it's easy now to look at it and be like, oh yeah, we did all that, but then you think back to the weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of complete focus and commitment on creating something. And yeah, so I like being disconnected, and
Shown that it pays off. It pays.
it can pay if like, I'm never a person to be bored. There's always something I can be doing or working on or fixing, or I don't need the online connection to entertain me. That's
Clearly.
not who I am.
Okay, leave us with pants down story.
The pants down. Yeah.
Hashtag pants down.
Hashtag pants down always. And this is one of my favorite things about Fritz and his personality and characters.
And explain Fritz a little bit.
Yeah,
So he's
Fritz-
German, like,
Fritz is an Austrian, classic
Austrian, my bad.
Austrian. He's Austrian skier at heart, trained as an engineer, taught
Mad scientist. Right?
mad scientist, but he's like worked teaching engineering at technical high schools and like had a professional training and career, and passionate skier. His father is a great skier, mountaineer, climber, and like same kind of over there. It's quite common in Austria because the entire country is pretty much mountains. So, or not but most of the country. So there's the alpine countries of the Alps. There's a huge, that's their culture. Everything about it is to do with the mountains. So he's a product of that, and with a very creative mind and a drive, and mad scientist that wasn't satisfied and knew there could be a better way, and he applied himself and his skills and used his massive genius brain and created something that changed our entire industry for the better. And I feel extremely fortunate just to have gotten to meet him and hang out with him as much as I have, and gotten to ski with him.
And he's how old now?
He would be, I think he's 57. So the original low-tech binding he first like patented and came out with was 1984. So
Wow.
I was 1 year old. But so Fritz, I mean, he's just a wealth of knowledge. Like he'll take us, Jen and I visited him, and Imo was over there, and he'll like, oh, today we're going to go to the Farmhouse Museum of Austria, and they've taken all these elm houses, they're called, from all the regions of Austria and around surrounding countries, and like took them down board by board and rebuilt them perfectly. And like there's all the different regions and eras, and you just walk through there and he tells you about all of them and where they came from and why they were like that. And he's just like an encyclopedia. We went to this armor museum in Innsbruck, and they hand out a little like pendant, you rent one for 20 euros or something, and it has all the languages, and you can just like get earphones and listen. You type in the numbers of all the displays, and there's some audio. We didn't need that. Fritz just he's like, oh, this is from, the Middle Ages and this battle, and these guys had this kind of sword, and these guys built this, and like I wish I had that kind of mental capacity to memorize like all this information and details and facts, and that's just like fun for him. And he's a teacher. He loves to explain and like pass on anything he's memorized or learned. But the incredible thing is he's Austrian, and in Austria, especially nowadays, back in his generation, not as common to be fully like fluent in English. People have some, but like he's like flawless, and his humor, like I think to really, I have no language skills. I can't learn. I'm so lazy and so stupid. But for someone to learn a second language and become so proficient at it and be able to express their personality with humor, and that's like, that really shows that you understand the language completely. Mm-hmm. And he's also got this incredible sense of humor that's constantly making fun of himself and what he does or any accomplishment, or like he loves to make light of any situation. And so, we're working away tirelessly for hours and doing all this. And it's like one of the big innovations, or like the drive for this project with the ski boot, was we want to really focus on user interface. We're tired of messing around every transition. Ski touring's hard. Let's streamline this. Let's make it easy, and let's make it fun. And so we were like, oh, we can link everything with this one buckle, and that's nothing new. That's been around in randonnée racing. We've done it in a little different way, but to have a real like a ski boot with decent skiing performance, to have that is kind of the new point. And somehow along the way it was like, don't touch it, don't touch your buckles, just leave your pants down, and pants down always. And like he coined that term, and he really was like, that's that's it, you know, like that should be the like if it was up to him, that's the marketing slogan. It's like hilarious because it makes you scratch your head, pants down always. Like what the hell are they? There's a bunch of like bad things that go along with this, and like, but once you try the boot and you use it, try it on and switch it between walk and ski, it's like, yeah, pants down always.
You never have to
and you'll
pull your
never
pants
forget
up
that.
essentially to play with your boots
Yeah,
is what they're getting at.
You'll never forget that slogan, you know, it's genius.
Yeah,
and
it
it's a
works.
second language.
Nice one, Fritz. Well, thanks so much. We just skipped our dinner, so I'm hoping that we can actually get some food.
Oh yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's such an incredible story. You've revolutionized our sport in so many ways as an athlete and now an engineer. And it's been so fun to watch your passion, just to listen to it.
Well, thank you for having me and setting this interview up, and thank you for those compliments. I don't know if it's true. Yeah, I hope the film.
I thought you were going to be. I thought you were kind of shy. Like, we haven't heard too many words out of Hoji through the matchstick world. Turns out he has a lot to say.
Yeah, well, I'm getting older, so I like to ramble on, and yeah, this will be I think this film will be a good opportunity to like really
have a voice.
Yeah, show a bit more of. It's been such an incredible journey. Super fortunate and. Great, amazing people that have made it all possible, and I want this project to really like bring them into the light as well, and a lot of the athletes are involved that have been my friends and ski partners, and it's just going to be I think a lot of fun to just go through it all and try and put it together in somehow a palatable hour.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. It'll be awesome. All right, well, thanks again, and good luck with the rest of your tour.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, friends. It absolutely means the world to me to have you listening. If you enjoyed the conversation, go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes. Help me spread the word. And be sure to subscribe. Until then, see you in the mountains, unicorns.